The massive viewing screen in the Galactic Council chamber showed a small fleet of ships entering the outer reaches of Council space. The gathered representatives of 50 alien species watched with mild interest as the sensor data scrolled across their personal displays. It was just another first contact scenario, until the numbers started making them frown. "These readings must be wrong," Admiral Rex said, his scaled fingers tapping against the Council table. The purple-skinned military advisor to the Council had overseen first contact situations for 30 years, but he'd never seen anything like this. Ships this small couldn't possibly be capable of interstellar travel. The Council head, a tall being with silvery skin, leaned forward. "Yet here they are, Admiral. Our sensors don't lie." The human ships were tiny compared to standard galactic vessels, where most species built their ships to be at least 5 miles long. These newcomers had vessels barely reaching half a mile in length. It seemed impossible that they could house the necessary engines, crew quarters, and support systems needed for deep space travel. "Perhaps they are scout ships," one of the Council members suggested. Admiral Rex shook his head. "No. According to their transmission, this is their primary diplomatic fleet." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Several Council members didn't even try to hide their amusement. The idea that any species would send such diminutive vessels as their main diplomatic force seemed absurd. The main doors of the chamber slid open with a soft hiss. A human male walked in, dressed in a crisp blue uniform that bore the insignia of Earth's United Space Command. He stood just under 6 feet tall, another source of quiet chuckles from the larger alien species present. "Ambassador Thomas Reed of Earth," the chamber's AI announced, "representative of the human race." Reed walked to the center of the chamber with confident steps, seemingly unbothered by the towering aliens around him. His gray hair and lined face spoke of experience, while his steady gaze suggested he was used to being underestimated. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," Reed began, his voice clear and strong. "I come on behalf of humanity to formally request Earth's admission into the galactic community." Admiral Rex couldn't contain himself. "With those ships," he pointed to the screen. "Ambassador Reed, surely you jest. Those vessels couldn't survive a single blast from even our smallest defensive platforms." Reed's expression remained neutral. "Our ships are built to our specifications, Admiral. They serve our needs perfectly." "Your needs?" Another Council member spoke up, their tentacles waving in amusement. "Your entire diplomatic fleet could fit inside one of our cargo holds." More laughter filled the chamber. Reed waited patiently for it to die down. The Council head raised a hand for silence. "Ambassador Reed, while we appreciate your species' achievement in reaching the stars, we have certain standards. Ships of your size simply aren't practical for interstellar operations. They suggest a primitive level of technological development." Reed nodded slowly. "I understand your concern. Would you like a demonstration of our ship's capabilities?" "That won't be necessary," Admiral Rex cut in. "The numbers speak for themselves. Your vessels lack the size for proper weapons systems, adequate shielding, or meaningful cargo capacity. It would be irresponsible of us to admit a species that could not properly defend itself or contribute to galactic trade." The human ambassador's lips curved into a slight smile. "As you wish." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data crystal. "This contains Earth's contact information. Should you reconsider? Remember, Admiral, size isn't everything." As Reed turned to leave, several Council members openly smirked at what they saw as a retreat. None of them noticed the knowing look in the human's eyes or the way he carried himself, not like someone who had been humiliated, but like someone who knew something they didn't. The Council head typed a few notes into their terminal. "Well, that's settled. Mark their territory as a developing region. Perhaps in a few hundred years, they'll have ships of proper size." Admiral Rex nodded in agreement, already forgetting about the tiny human ships. After all, what threat could such small vessels pose to the mighty fleets of the galaxy? They would remember this moment later, and cursed their arrogance. 3 months after humanity's failed attempt to join the Galactic Council, James Carter sat in his dimly lit office at Earth's Defense Intelligence Headquarters. His eyes were fixed on the holographic display floating above his desk, showing movements of massive ships at the edge of human space. "Computer, replay that last sensor sweep," he ordered, rubbing his tired eyes. The display flickered and showed a formation of enormous vessels, each one nearly 10 miles long, moving in a pattern that made his stomach sink. The Forge Empire was preparing for war. Carter had spent 15 years studying alien military tactics, and these movements were textbook invasion preparations. He pressed a button on his desk. "Get me Admiral Wilson. Priority 1. Within minutes, the weathered face of Admiral Wilson appeared on his screen. Unlike the showy uniforms of alien military leaders, she wore a simple black uniform with minimal insignia. "This better be good, Carter. I was in the middle of a fleet exercise." "The Forge Empire is coming," Carter said, transmitting the sensor data. "Their dreadnoughts are forming attack patterns near the Pluto defense line. Intel suggests they saw our rejection from the Council as a sign of weakness." Wilson's expression hardened as she studied the data. "How many ships?" 20 dreadnoughts, each with support fleets. Conservative estimate puts their total force at around 300 vessels. "All of them massive, no doubt," Wilson said with a hint of a smile. "They still think bigger means better." Carter nodded. "Their smallest support ship is 3 miles long. Their flagship, the Emperor's Fist, is 15 miles from bow to stern." Wilson typed something into her console, and new data appeared on Carter's screen. The readiness status of Earth's defense fleet. Unlike the enormous alien vessels, the human ships were compact and numerous. The largest was barely half a mile long. "Status of the new targeting systems?" Wilson asked. "Final tests completed last week. All ships are equipped with the Mark VI predictive AI. The simulations show 98% accuracy against targets of dreadnought size." Wilson's smile grew slightly. Shame the Council didn't want that demonstration. Might have saved the Forge Empire some embarrassment. She pressed another button, and alert signals began flashing across both their screens. "Initiate Defense Plan Delta. I want all ships at ready stations in 6 hours." Carter watched as hundreds of small dots on his display began moving. Earth's fleet mobilizing for war. "Should we try contacting the Council? Request assistance?" "They made their position clear," Wilson said firmly. "They think we're primitives with toy ships. Let them think that." Request denied. As Carter prepared to sign off, Wilson added, "One more thing. Get me everything we have on Forge Empire ship designs. Every weakness, every blind spot, every structural vulnerability. If they want to judge us by size, let's show them what these tiny ships can do." The next few days were a blur of activity. Earth's fleet gathered in defensive positions throughout the solar system, hidden among asteroid fields and planetary rings. Unlike the massive alien ships that needed large, clear spaces to maneuver, human vessels could slit through gaps barely larger than themselves. In the Forge Empire's command ship, General Krax stood before a holographic display of the solar system. His massive form towered over his subordinates as he outlined the invasion plan. "The humans are pathetic," he growled. "Their ships are so small, they must be short-range defense vessels. They've never faced a proper fleet." His second-in-command, Commander Voss, looked uncertain. "But sir, our scouts report they have unusual energy signatures." "Unusual because they're primitive," Krax interrupted. "Their ships are toys compared to ours. We will crush them in a single battle, and their resources will fuel our expansion for decades." As the Forge Empire fleet moved closer to Earth's territory, neither side backed down. But while the aliens broadcasted their approach with proud arrogance, humanity's ships waited silently in the darkness of space. The storm was about to break, and only one side truly understood what was coming. The massive Forge Empire dreadnought, Emperor's Fist, emerged from faster-than-light travel near Jupiter's orbit. Its enormous shadow could have covered Earth's moon twice over. Behind it, 19 more dreadnoughts appeared, each one a city-sized monument to alien military might. Their support ships spread out in a web formation that seemed to fill the solar system. In the command center of the Emperor's Fist, General Krax stood with his arms crossed, looking at the tactical display. His yellow eyes narrowed as the scan results came in. "Where are they hiding?" he growled. "Scan again." Commander Voss worked quickly at his station. "Sir, we're detecting small energy signatures throughout the asteroid belt, but they're too small to be proper warships." "Cowards," Krax spat. "They scatter like insects before true power." He stepped forward, activating the communication system. "This is General Krax of the Forge Empire. Your pathetic civilization ends today. Surrender now, and we may spare some of your population for labor camps." The silence that followed lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then, a calm voice responded. "Admiral Wilson of Earth. This is Earth Command. We acknowledge your presence, General. We suggest you turn your fleet around and leave. This is your only warning." Laughter erupted across the Forge Empire bridge. Krax's massive frame shook with amusement. "You dare threaten us? Your entire fleet could fit in our landing base." "Size isn't everything, General," Wilson replied, echoing Ambassador Reed's words from months ago. "But you're about to learn it the hard way." Before Krax could respond, his tactical officer shouted in alarm. "Sir, multiple contacts. Hundreds of them." The space around the Forge fleet suddenly came alive. From behind asteroids, from planetary rings, from seemingly empty space, human ships appeared. They moved in perfect formation, but not the rigid patterns that alien fleets used. These ships flowed like schools of fish, each vessel knowing exactly where every other would be. "Those can't be warships," Krax insisted, even as his tactical display filled with contacts. "They're too small. Target the nearest group with our main guns. Show them what real weapons look like." The Emperor's Fist turned its massive primary weapon toward a cluster of human vessels. The weapon was half a mile long itself, nearly the size of an entire human ship. Energy built up along its length, creating a light show visible from Earth's telescopes. "Sir," Voss said quietly, "the human ships are accelerating. Their speed, this can't be right." The human vessels suddenly broke formation, scattering in what seemed like random directions. Their acceleration was impossible. No ship that large should be able to move that quickly. They pulled turns that would have torn apart vessels twice their size. The main gun fired, a beam of energy that could have cracked a small moon. It passed harmlessly through empty space where the human ships had been moments before. "Impossible," Krax roared. "Nothing can move that fast." Admiral Wilson's voice came through again, still calm. "General, your ships are impressive. They're also predictable, slow, and have more blind spots than a solar eclipse. Would you like to surrender now, or should we demonstrate our own weapons?" As if to answer her question, 3 human vessels broke from their evasive patterns and streaked toward one of the smaller Forge dreadnoughts. They moved in perfect coordination, their paths forming a complex dance that the massive ship's targeting systems couldn't follow. "This is ridiculous," Krax snarled. "They're going to ram us. With those tiny—" He never finished the sentence. The 3 human ships fired simultaneously. Their weapons weren't the overwhelming energy beams that the Forge Empire favored. Instead, precisely targeted pulses struck the dreadnought at 3 exact points. The massive ship's shields flickered and died. For the first time, real fear crept into General Krax's voice. How did they know exactly where to hit? Commander Voss stared at his display in horror. "Sir, I don't think they were running from our scans earlier. They were scanning us. Every evasive maneuver has brought them closer at better angles. They've been analyzing our weaknesses this entire time." The human ships began their real attack, and the galaxy's assumptions about size and power were about to be thoroughly shattered. From the command bridge of Earth's flagship, Swift Justice, Admiral Wilson watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. The massive Forge Empire ships looked like slow-moving mountains in space, while her ships darted between them like lightning. "Battle Group Alpha, execute Pattern 7, she commanded. Groups Beta and Charlie, prepare for synchronized strike on their flagship." On the main screen, 12 human ships broke into smaller units of 3. They weaved through the enemy formation, moving so fast that the alien targeting systems couldn't lock onto them. Their paths seemed random to untrained eyes, but every turn, every acceleration was precisely calculated by their advanced AI systems. Inside the Emperor's Fist, chaos reigned. General Krax's face had turned from its normal gray to a pale white as report after report of failures came in. "Our weapons can't track them," a weapons officer shouted. "They're too fast, too small. Impossible." Krax slammed his fist on his command chair. "No ship can pull those maneuvers. The G-forces would kill any crew." Commander Voss, monitoring the battle data, suddenly understood. "Sir, they're not pulling those G-forces. Look at their ship designs. Their internal systems are packed tight in heavily shielded cores. Most of their hull space is empty. When they turn, their outer structures flex and bend." As if to demonstrate this, 3 human ships shot past the bridge viewport, their hulls seeming to ripple as they changed direction at speeds that would have torn apart conventional ships. Their smaller size and revolutionary design allowed them to ignore most of the limitations that shaped traditional shipbuilding. "All ships, fire spread pattern," Krax ordered desperately. "They can't dodge if we fill space with weapons fire." The Forge Empire fleet fired everything they had, turning space into a web of energy beams and plasma bolts. But the human ships slipped through the gaps, their AIs calculating safe paths through the chaos. Where they had to block a shot, their advanced shields absorbed the energy with minimal strain. "Group Delta, disable their port weapons array," Wilson commanded. "Engineering, show them why we built our ships this way." 6 human vessels moved in perfect formation toward the Emperor's Fist. Instead of dodging the incoming fire, they split into pairs, each pair rotating around each other as they flew. The rotation created a magnetic field that deflected enemy fire while requiring minimal shield power. "Sir," Voss called out in alarm. "Those rotating pairs, they're building up some kind of energy charge." The human ships released their built-up energy in concentrated beams, striking the massive dreadnought's weapon ports with surgical precision. Each hit was perfectly timed, the combined energy overwhelming the local shields and burning through the weapon mounts. A Galactic Council observation ship, watching from a safe distance, transmitted everything to the council chamber. The alien representatives who had laughed at human ship sizes weeks ago now watched in stunned silence as their assumptions about space warfare were systematically destroyed. "Admiral," Carter's voice came through on the command channel. "Their fleet is starting to break formation. Their coordination is falling apart." Wilson nodded. "They're realizing that bigger isn't better. All ships, execute Operation Thunderstrike." The human fleet moved as one, hundreds of small ships forming complex, 3-dimensional patterns around the Forge Empire vessels. Each movement was precisely calculated to create blind spots in the enemy's targeting systems while opening up perfect firing angles for their own weapons. "What are they doing?" Krax demanded, watching the display in growing horror. "Why can't we hit them?" "Sir," Voss replied, his voice shaking, I think this is what they were designed for. All those gaps in their formation. They're not gaps at all. It's a net, and we're already caught in it." As the human ships began their coordinated strike, the truth became clear. Humanity hadn't built small ships because they couldn't build bigger ones. They had built them this way because it was better. Every aspect of their design, from their size to their construction, was deliberately chosen for maximum combat effectiveness. The dance of death continued, and the galaxy's greatest military power was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. In the observation chamber of the Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Reed stood quietly watching the battle. He had been invited to observe what the Council expected to be humanity's defeat. Instead, they were witnessing a revolution in space warfare. "Would anyone like me to explain why we built our ships this way?" Reed asked the stunned alien diplomats. None of them were laughing now. Before anyone could respond, the space around them lit up with another coordinated attack by Earth's fleet. 3 Forge Empire dreadnoughts had already been disabled, their massive forms drifting powerless in space. The rest were finding it increasingly difficult to maintain their defensive positions. "Your ships," one council member finally spoke, "they're not just small. They're designed to work together." Reed nodded. Humanity learned long ago that the true power of a fleet isn't in individual ship size, but in how they function as a whole. Each of our vessels carries the most advanced AI networking systems ever developed. On the main display, they watched as 20 human ships moved in perfect synchronization, their paths forming complex patterns that seemed impossible to coordinate in real time. Their combined shield frequencies created interference patterns that disrupted the Forge Empire's targeting systems. "Observe," Reed pointed to the screen. "Notice how our ship's energy weapons are relatively small compared to yours, but when fired together." As if on cue, a group of human ships fired their weapons simultaneously at a Forge Empire dreadnought. Each beam alone might have been weak compared to the massive ship's shields, but the combined effect, striking at precisely calculated points, cut through the defenses like they weren't there. Aboard the Emperor's Fist, General Krax watched in horror as another of his mighty vessels went dark. "How?" he demanded. "How are they doing this?" Commander Voss, still analyzing the battle data, finally understood. "Sir, it's their whole approach to warfare. Look at their power distribution. Their ships don't waste energy maintaining huge shields or powering massive weapons. They use that power for maneuverability and precision strikes instead. But our ships are stronger," Krax insisted. "Our weapons are bigger." "And that's exactly the problem," Voss replied. "We built our ships to overwhelm enemies with size and power. They built theirs to be precisely what they needed. No more, no less." In Earth's command center, Admiral Wilson received a new report from Carter. "Admiral, their fleet formation is collapsing. Their ships are too big to support each other effectively. They can't adapt to our attack patterns." Wilson allowed herself a small smile. "Send in the interceptors. Show them Phase 2. A new group of human ships emerged from hiding behind Earth's moon. These were even smaller than the others, barely a quarter-mile long. The Forge Empire officers initially dismissed them as no threat, until they saw what these tiny ships could do. The interceptors carried no weapons at all. Instead, they were packed with the most advanced electronic warfare systems ever created. They slipped through the gaps in the enemy formation, their small size making them nearly impossible to target. Once in position, they began broadcasting signals that interfered with the dreadnought's internal communications. "We're losing control," Voss reported, his hands flying over his console. "Their signals are disrupting our command network. Ships can't coordinate their actions." Back in the Council observation chamber, Reed finally revealed humanity's greatest secret. "We didn't build small ships because we had to. We built them this way because human history taught us something important. Adaptability beats raw power every time." He gestured to the battle display, where the mighty Forge Empire fleet was being systematically dismantled by ships a fraction of their size. In nature, the largest creatures aren't always the ones that survive. It's the ones that can adapt, work together, and use their resources most efficiently. The council members watched in silence as humanity's tiny fleet demonstrated just how wrong they had been about the relationship between size and military power. The mighty Forge Empire fleet was falling apart. Their formation, once an impressive wall of massive warships, had broken into scattered groups of confused vessels. 6 of their dreadnoughts were completely disabled, floating helplessly in space. Several others showed heavy damage from precision strikes by Earth's ships. On the bridge of the Emperor's Fist, General Krax could barely believe his eyes. His mighty flagship, 15 miles of the most advanced alien technology, was being systematically taken apart by ships he could have crushed in his hand, if he could catch them. "Sir," Commander Voss called out, his voice shaking. "We've lost contact with the entire Western battle group. The human interceptors have completely scrambled their systems." Krax slammed his fist on his command console. "Impossible. Call in the reserve fleet." "We can't, sir. Their electronic warfare is blocking all long-range communications. We're cut off." Through the main viewport, they watched as 3 human ships performed what looked like an impossible maneuver. They spiraled around each other, creating a combined energy field that deflected all incoming fire, while their weapons pierced straight through the shields of another dreadnought. "Their coordination," Voss said quietly. "It's perfect. No crew could react that fast. Their ships must be linked together somehow, acting as one." Admiral Wilson's voice came through their speakers, clear and calm. "General Krax, your fleet is defeated. You have lost 6 dreadnoughts, and 4 more are severely damaged. Surrender now, and we will show mercy." Krax roared in frustration. "Never. We are the Forge Empire. We do not surrender to primitives with toy ships." "Very well." Wilson's voice carried a note of resignation. "All ships, execute final protocol." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The human fleet moved as one, hundreds of small ships flowing like a river of steel through space. They formed complex, 3-dimensional patterns around the remaining Forge Empire vessels. "Sir," Voss reported, his eyes wide with fear, "every time they move, they're cutting off another escape route. They're not just attacking us. They're hurting us." He was right. The human ships had turned space itself into a trap. Their precise movements and coordinated actions forced the huge alien vessels into an ever-shrinking pocket of space. Any attempt to break out was met with precise strikes that disabled engines and weapons. In the Galactic Council observation vessel, Ambassador Reed explained to the amazed diplomats, "Our ships carry minimal crews. Most of the space that other species use for crew quarters, we fill with advanced AI systems and automation. This allows our ships to perform maneuvers that would kill most organic crews." The council members watched as another Forge Empire dreadnought went dark, its massive form now nothing more than an expensive space station. "Your ships," one council member said, "they're not just weapons. They're a completely new way of thinking about space warfare." Reed nodded. "We studied every space battle in galactic history. Everyone built bigger ships, more powerful weapons. Nobody asked if that was the best approach. We did." Back on the Emperor's Fist, desperation was setting in. None of their weapons could hit the agile human vessels. Their shields were being slowly picked apart by precisely targeted strikes. Their supporting fleet was either disabled or trapped. "General," Voss said, looking at his tactical display, "we've lost this battle. If we continue, they'll disable every ship we have." Krax stared at the swarm of human ships surrounding his fleet. These tiny vessels had completely outmaneuvered and outfought the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. His pride had led them into this trap, and now, "Send the signal," he finally said, his voice heavy with defeat. "All ships, surrender." As the Forge Empire fleet powered down their weapons, Admiral Wilson allowed herself a small smile. "All ships, ceasefire. Begin rescue operations for damaged vessels, both ours and theirs." The battle was over. David had beaten Goliath, and the galaxy would never be the same. 1 month after the historic battle, the Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from every spacefaring species. The same room that had once echoed with laughter at humanity's tiny ships now buzzed with excitement as Ambassador Reed took the speaker's platform. Admiral Rex, the military advisor who had dismissed human ships as primitive, stood up first. His scaled face showed genuine remorse. "On behalf of the Council, I formally apologize to humanity," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "We let our preconceptions blind us. Your victory over the Forge Empire has shown us that innovation matters more than tradition." Reed accepted the apology with a graceful nod. The battle recordings played on screens around the chamber, showing Earth's ships dancing through space, dismantling an enemy fleet 20 times their size. In one corner, General Crack stood under guard, watching the replay of his defeat. His massive frame seemed somehow smaller now. Commander Voss stood beside him, but as a free man, his cooperation and insights during the battle had earned him different treatment. "The Forge Empire will pay reparations for their unprovoked attack," the Council had announced. "Furthermore, we formally invite Earth to join the Galactic Council with full membership status. Your technological innovations have earned humanity a place among the stars." But that was just the beginning. As the Council session continued, representatives from dozens of species approached Reed with requests. Would Earth consider sharing its ship design principles? Could we arrange for human technical advisors? Would your shipyards accept commission work? Reed handled each request diplomatically, but his eyes twinkled with amusement. The same species that had laughed at human ships now wanted to copy them. Admiral Wilson, attending the session in her dress uniform, stood to address the gathering. "Earth is willing to share some of our advancements," she said. "But first, you need to understand our philosophy. Size isn't everything. Efficiency, adaptability, and coordination matter more than raw power." She gestured to a holographic display showing the internal layout of a human vessel. "Our ships are small because they need to be. Every cubic meter serves a purpose. We don't build to impress. We build to win." The technical presentation that followed changed galactic military doctrine forever. Species that had spent centuries building ever larger ships now started exploring smaller, more agile designs. The age of the massive dreadnought was over. In the Council's military archives, Admiral Rex updated the official records. "Under human military capability," he wrote, "initial assessment was gravely incorrect. Humanity's apparent technological limitations were in fact carefully chosen design features. Their tiny fleet represents the most significant advancement in space warfare tactics in recorded history." Commander Voss, granted asylum by Earth in exchange for his tactical insights, worked with human engineers to help other species understand the new paradigm. "The humans didn't just beat us," he explained to a group of alien officers. "They changed the rules of the game. They showed us that bigger isn't better. Better is better." As the session concluded, Reed looked out at the chamber that had once mocked his people. Now they hung on every word, eager to learn from the species they had dismissed as primitive. "There's an old Earth saying," he told them, "never judge a book by its cover, or in this case, never judge a ship by its size." The Council head raised their hand for attention. "Let the record show that on this day, humanity has not only joined our community, but has fundamentally changed it. Their victory over the Forge Empire marks the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization." As Reed left the chamber, he passed the display showing Earth's tiny fleet in action. The ships that had been laughed at were now the most respected vessels in known space. It was a powerful reminder that true strength comes not from size or power, but from innovation, efficiency, and the courage to think differently. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Never underestimate humanity. Size isn't everything, but humanity's impact on the galaxy certainly was.